I'll call to order the Town of Old Saybrook Zoning Commission meeting for Monday, July 7th, 7 p.m. Town Hall, first floor conference room, 302 Main Street, Old Saybrook. This evening in attendance, Mark Caldarello, Chair, Jerry Lewis, Vice Chair, Bob Friedman, regular member. Seated for John Henry, who's not here, is Brenda Dyson. Laura Gray, who's not here, will seat Michael Kelly. And we have recording clerk Joanne Galley. And online, I think we have one. Or
No,
nothing. And in the audience, we have four.
actually, one.
Huh? One?
We have one.
One, yeah, this one's on.
Can you see her?
She's not here, she's not online, so
Oh.
it's seated, Mike.
Yeah.
Regular business and minutes from our,
She's here.
okay, I will remind by, okay. So Casey, wasn't sure if you were gonna be here, so I had seated Mike in your place, but I'll unseat Mike. Cause they were both in participated last meeting, I'm gonna seat you for Laura. Okay. From our, last meeting of June 16th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve? So moved by Jerry. Are there any corrections or additions? You second? You second, yes, sorry. Are there any corrections or additions? Not hearing any, move to a vote. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Passes 5-0-0. Thank you. There's no additional correspondence other than what relates to our hearing tonight. So I'll move on to the continued public hearings. Mount Vernon Company application for special exception use for oil change facility at 1335 Boston Post Road, map 27, lot 24, Gateway Business B4 District. Owner is Morgan and Molly LLC. Applicant is Mount Vernon Company. Agent is attorney Edward Casella. Action is closed by July 7th, 2025, or no later than July 20th, 2025. I'll make note at this point that I was absent from the last meeting. I did read all the materials and watch the video from our last meeting. Jerry is saying,
Wow.
so I feel confident I can partake in this evening. Before I turn it over to you, there were, from the recording, there were a number of missing elements in the application, and I just want to go through those. So that we're saying, all of which I believe have been submitted, okay? The application was missing as Chris called it, the colored sheets. We had the coastal site review, we had CRAD, statement of use, the floor plan, the landscape plan, photometrics, traffic study, site plan, and additional photos, all which we do have for this evening. Okay. Attorney Casella?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Ed Casella, representing the Mount Vernon Company. Rick Howes is online. Damian Fox is here in attendance, and Joe Wren, project architect as well. So yeah, we worked with the town to make sure that everything is not only online, but in the packets. I think one thing came into the file after the packets went out regarding traffic. So there was a response last week on July 2nd there was back and forth between the traffic consultants. Our consultant submitted a response, and then we did get a response letter back from Greg Del Rio.
Right.
So I think this needs to go into the record. Was submitted to Chris and Sarah online.
We did get these, I believe, electronically.
You probably did, yes. Yeah.
You got
Brought one.
record?
Brought one to the meeting.
Okay.
And then, as I said, I noticed that today, July 3rd letter came in with the final conclusion We concur, you all have the July 3rd? You guys
Yes.
get the July 3rd letter, okay. We concur with the findings of the traffic study that the proposed development will not have a significant impact on surrounding roadways and intersections. So hopefully, the traffic route can be closed. Again, we're not gonna go file through things that were discussed at the last meeting, but this is an application for development of a motor vehicle repair facility, 1333. Boston Post Road, and there was a number of questions and clarifications regarding the plans that I just wanted to run through with you to show you the changes that were made in our, up here in your submitted materials. And then if you have questions, we can drill into that a little deeper, but I figured this was a good place to start. The first related to the landscaping. There was comments at both the meeting and on Jeff Jacobson's letter regarding landscaping. So there was a new street tree that was added to the landscaping plan. So that was done to comply with the comments. There was a further comment, I think in his letter, that the plan should have a modification date on it. So there is a revision date. If you look on the right-hand side, you see Route 1 oil change. And then way to the right, there's a revision that says revised 6/23/25. On the landscape plan. Two trees added, okay. Two trees added, two street trees.
Or a total of 5.
Total of 5.
Do you wanna go through each point and then
Yeah.
come back to any questions at that point? Or do you want questions after each?
Yeah, we can. Questions after each.
Commissioners, are there any questions regarding the updated landscaping plan? Any questions regarding the landscaping plan
Uh,
as
yeah,
revised?
well, it's related to landscaping in that there's the entrance, the one-way entrance from Route 1 on the eastern side of the property. Crosses the property line and then passes through the landscaping as demonstrated in what we see here. And there's a 25-foot front landscaped area. And then from that direction perpendicular to Route 1, then there is an available left turn, which goes across the front of the building all the way to the western drive exit to the site. And there are one-way arrows in such a manner that once you make that left, the only thing you can do is exit the property. And I see that portion of the access drive between the eastern edge of the building and Route 1 as useless. The entrance from Route 1 should go straight to the rear of the property so that customers can enter the building as designed. And that if they do not wish to enter the building, they continue to the exit drive, which gets them out to Route 1. There's a section of pavement there that doesn't need to be there. It only provides for U-turns from Route 1. And therefore, in my opinion, with regard to regulation. In the gray box, to the right, section 68.1.2.B.1-2, within the pedestrian node, and this is within the pedestrian node, do not locate a parking area or access driveway. And there's two or connecting parking areas between a non-residential building and the street line. This is an access drive, even though it may not go to parking areas per se. It's an access drive between a non-residential building and the street line. And it doesn't need to be there. It serves no purpose except to enable a faster U-turn back onto Route 1. And in my opinion, a rearrangement of the landscaping in that area would enhance the site and reduce the impervious pavement. Same number of shrubs could be placed in between the building and the front landscaped area. And there's nothing given up except for impervious pavement.
Sure, please.
So we do think that's essential. The operators, and Damien is there as well, they operate these sites, and if someone pulls into the site, and we don't expect this, but if the traffic was queued to around that corner, and they pull in and they say, I see that queue space now, I see that queue length, and I don't want to wait that long, so I'm going to leave the site. If they made that decision, they have no other way to exit the site other than that, so it makes it safer. Also, the majority of that driveway, probably 75 or 80% of it is required for the cars exiting the oil change facility, so there's only a small portion, 15 or 20 feet, whatever that length is, that Mr. Commissioner Friedman is talking about. It meets the regulations, it's much less impervious than there is now. It meets the landscape requirements, there's 25 feet of landscaping in that area to meet the regulations that's currently asphalt right to the property line. And we have another 20 to 25 feet from the property line to the edge of the pavement in DOT right of way that is also green space with grass and trees. So we have a 50-foot green space area.
That'd be great.
From the edge, yes, thank you. It's from the edge of the driveway to the edge of this driveway that far exceeds any other property in this area. So it exceeds what the regulations require, and we don't see anything in the regulations that disallows that little connection of the driveway to be there. We think it's better for traffic management, and we think it's better for safety. It's only a 14-foot wide lane by 20 or so feet long, so it's probably a few hundred square feet or less. We have a drainage system, even though there's a significant reduction of impervious on this particular site. We have a drainage system that has been reviewed and approved by your town engineer, that accounts for all the proposed impervious on the site. So with all those things combined together, we feel that there's no reason to disallow that small connection between the two. If I pulled in there and I had kids in the car and I saw the cars coming around the corner from the queue, I want to leave, there needs to be some escape lane. A lot of drive-throughs, I think in your current updated drive-through regulation to require an escape lane as well. Here, we'd be going into the landscape buffer, and that would be a lot more asphalt if we had 2 lanes going all the way to the back. So we think this is a very smart compromise to achieve the same goal.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah.
One other thing with that.
Damien Fox.
Yeah. I have another place, 23 years, the mailman, we love it. FedEx and UPS, those are the guys. I understand what the gentleman says about the U-turn. I don't see it in my other place. We have the other place as well. And the mailman.
Could you speak up, please?
Yeah, the mail carriers, letter carriers, are the ones that are gonna appreciate that, because it saves them time from going all the way around the building. We have one at our other location, and we sit very similar, and we don't see a lot of people doing U-turns in there. I understand how it might look like that. But, I think FedEx, UPS, and the mail guys are the 3 people that would, help the most also.
That portion of the road that Commissioner Friedman is speaking about, is that something that would also be used for future development on the western parcel?
No.
Not at all. So it'd be self-contained.
Yes.
If someone went in this entrance by accident, decided to get over to that side of the site, then maybe, but it's not intended for the future. In the future, the single exit driveway will become a 2-lane enter and exit driveway in the center.
And this
That's the change.
exit portion would not be used
Correct.
in that.
Well, The exit lane along the western side would just be expanded to be 24 feet wide to the area.
So it would be expanded, so it would be used.
The center lane
The
would
center lane.
become two-way.
Right.
Right now, the DOT won't allow us a two-way because there's really no need for the entrance of that.
That would be for a future application. Okay. Bob, did you have,
Well, and also with regard to the vehicle access drive in section 62.2.5 or A, vehicle access drive location, specifically says to consolidate multiple or continual curb cuts wherever possible to no more than one access drive from any lot across the frontage of whichever adjacent street has lesser potential for traffic congestion or hazard to vehicle or pedestrian traffic. So on the survey for the property from the earlier existing use of the property had two curb cuts. And they were at the eastern side where the entrance curb cut it remains. And there's another curb cut shown on the survey of the site for the western edge of the property. And so this western exit that you show on the plans for this proposed use is a different curb cut location from the prior one, correct?
Yes, and smaller.
So how does that achieve the goals of 62.2.5 to consolidate the curb cuts? Because the other curb cut counts, and if you're not using it for this application, then, in my opinion, you have moved that curb cut to a new location, and you will not get a third curb cut to this lot.
So we're not looking for a third curb cut, we're proposing two, we have two very wide curb cuts, they're about 30 feet wide right now. We're proposing a much more narrow one-way enter and a much more narrow one-way exit, so we're reducing, the size of those curb cuts, even with any potential feature, which is not part of this application. It will still be two curb cuts, but the total width along the curb cut will be less. And I think that regulation, because it says the lesser traffic street, that more pertains to a lot with two road frontages. Which we don't have.
So the exit access drive to the newly located curb cut along the western side of the proposed building is shown to be varying width, especially also mentioned in an engineering report, but the minimum width required for that one-way drive would be 14 feet.
Right.
And if that's what's provided, then that drive would have to be widened if this new curb cut on the western side of this proposal is to become both entrance and exit for any future development. That, I'm just alerting you to the fact that what you have there for exit only at 14 feet would work according to the regulations, but any new use of the property that would make that western access drive two-way would require the entire length to be in compliance with a two-way access drive.
Correct, it will become 24 feet wide, which is compliant with the two-way. The throats of these are slightly wider than 14 feet, and it does vary. And the reason for that is on the zoning site plan, we show a fire truck entering and exiting through the site. And we had to widen those throats a little bit, so it's a 14-foot minimum, so we meet that. They are a little bit wider in order to accommodate the old Saybrook ladder truck.
The June 19th report from Mr. Gregory Del Rio from SLR International Corporation regarding this application. I appreciate his comments. C3 comment number 3 on page 2 and about Dairy Queen and the timing of the traffic report And that it's good to see that the traffic count was done again on June 18th of this year on a Wednesday to count midweek trips generated by Dairy Queen during the weekday peak hours, it says. And so the weekday peak hours, what hours do the weekday peak hours include? Dairy Queen opens at 11:30. Doesn't include any time before Dairy Queen. The peak hours include before Dairy Queen opens.
Are you talking about peak hours for this use? For our use or for Dairy Queen's use?
That what went into the traffic report. It specifically says that trips were counted weekday peak hours from 7 to 9 AM and 4 to 6 PM were counted on June 18th. So for the 7 to 9 AM period, there was no traffic generated by Dairy Queen. Doesn't open till 11:30. That's also in the report. And so those traffic numbers should not be any different from the ones that traffic count that was conducted in January. And so the 4 to 6 PM numbers would be different. And where do we see that difference?
On the traffic report?
Other than the hypothetical 60% during a Saturday peak hour compared to the weekday peak hour.
The town traffic expert reviewed everything that was provided, and they clearly say in their latest letter that they're satisfied with all the information provided in the responses to those comments. So I'm not a traffic engineering professional, and neither is Ed, but all I could go on is this letter here from July 3rd that says that they reviewed everything provided and were satisfied.
January is because of the summer traffic.
Yeah, no, we understand. So, yeah. I'm looking at the newly submitted information that we provided.
All right, be that as it may, the issue of traffic and the peak hour trips generated and the traffic count, with regard to the input from the professionals, there is no indication that the traffic generated on this site will become a safety issue at this location.
That's
There may be times of congestion, but that's how it works.
Okay, he summarizes this height and size of the site would generate a total of 6, 10, and 9 vehicle trip ends during the weekday morning, weekday afternoon when Dairy Queen is open, and Saturday midday peak hours respectively. So it sounds like they covered all the bases.
And on page 4, Mr. Del Rio's report, comment 9 was exactly what I was talking about, that and your response was that it will be one-way movement throughout the facility with separate entry and exit driveways. It does not provide width sufficient to accommodate two-way movements or a pass-by operation. So that's well recognized here. That's what I was getting at before. And if there's a connection made to the circulation in the area where there are now shown enclosures for dumpsters for any other traffic to access the oil change business, that aisle there appears to be wide enough to do so at some point in the future. Provided that access to that other portion of the property is not by a third curb cut from Route 1.
No, it is not contemplated. The way that this was planned and laid out is so that that central driveway, the one most westernmost driveway, goes from 16 feet to accommodate the fire truck down closer to the sidewalk, and that would expand out to 24 feet to accommodate two-way traffic at that point.
And,
So would that mean that the curb cut would increase as well?
The curb cut, would get
Would
wide,
have to
yes.
be wide, correct?
And I met, Rick Chapman, who's the DOT traffic engineer for District Two, which covers the Saybrook. And he was on board, with this. They like reducing, they like one-way exits and entrances. And even we have two full, very wide curb cuts now, we like that we were reducing those down, making them less wide than they are now.
if that was my measurements.
All right.
On the, landscape plan, there's, on the western onto the western side of the exit curb cut, there's October Glory red maple added. And there's clearly a bold circle for a planting. And then the other one, so that's a good addition of a street tree. We appreciate that in terms of compliance. And the
There's another
next,
one added too, by the sidewalk.
the next two trees that are shown in the right of way, oh, there's often a problem with the DOT and planting of trees in the right of way. And so if the DOT does not appreciate the location of the planted October Glory red maple in the right of way, then that tree will have to be located on site. And that would be just on the lot, not in the right of way. So that will leave that up to you, the applicant and the tree installation and the DOT. But if it's not to be located in the right of way, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be there.
That's correct, and the second one is added because there were more than 40 feet between those two that are closest to it. So that fills in that gap, and that's not a problem as a condition to move that back if it needed to. However, this site, has a previous maintenance agreement between Town of Old Saybrook and DOT. You have the trees in the right of way at this location because the previous application, a previous applicant, previous owner had to put the sidewalk in and the street trees. The parking comes right up to the property line, so the trees only could be planted in the DOT right away. So there is already an existing maintenance agreement between the town and Connecticut DOT to have those trees in the right of way. So adding one is most likely, right, consistent with that agreement.
Okay.
Those are my comments on the landscaping. I have some questions with regard to windows.
Well, let's let them finish and go
Yeah,
through
we'll do the
their, and then
signs,
we'll come
and
back to the
and then
questions.
we'll talk about the building.
Can I ask one question about the landscaping? Is there any specific reason for the shape of the planted portion of the buffer to the west of the exit curb cut?
I'm not the landscape
Or
designer.
does it narrow down so much?
I'm not the landscape designer. I know that he was trying to give it some texture instead of being so linear, but also that takes into account future development of that site, so that the landscape doesn't have to be removed. But the landscape area, meets and well exceeds, since there are some like 500 and some odd plants being proposed, exceeds the requirements of the town for landscape.
Right, but we do have the 25, so when it gets developed, presumably that's for now it's grass beyond the planted area. But that will have to become planted.
Yeah, right now it's all grass. We will have to do the 25-foot buffer. Yes, again, he's trying to just give it some texture instead of beside the linear base. If you preferred a very, narrow strip along the property line of shrubs, you can do that.
Yep.
Obviously, you're not gonna, widen out, there's already so many shrubs, maybe more than are required, it's not gonna fill in the space, but we could reduce and even it out if you'd like.
It was just a question on your part.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I think it's compliant now, but I think when you come back to develop the site, that's not gonna be right.
And then the time being, it'll be green
Yeah.
grass.
Okay, all right, can you?
Signs, so for the signs, there was a question regarding the calculation of the wall area used for the building sign. So we provided an updated plan that shows that the width of the wall there is 35 feet by the 10 feet, which is allowed under the regulations, comes to a total of 350 square feet. So the wall sign, first wall sign is allowed to be 20% of that, or 70 square feet. And the sign that we have is 32 square feet, so it well meets the calculations. The triangle gable is not more than 2 feet offset off that wall. So it's eligible to be included in the the calculations under the sign regs. There was also a comment on a height dimension was on the top of the building, so that's been removed on this plan. The sign plan. And there's additional calculations completing additional height to the top of the finial was shown on the monument sign. So those are the changes made to the signs, if there's any question regarding that. No questions on the sign?
Bob, did you have any questions on the sign? Yes, sir.
Any questions on the signs?
Right, well,
Bob?
I have a question about the plane, the wall on which the sign is to be mounted.
Yes.
And I can't tell from the site elevation drawings if that wall is coplanar with the wall that's yellow on this depiction. Is that wall on the peak coplanar with the wall that has the doors in it? I can't, there's a roof in the way, I can't see that wall.
I think it's here. I think,
Is that, I assume there is an eave of that triangle,
yeah.
and therefore
It's
the wall
less,
is not located at the edge of the roofing.
where the
It's
door
recessed.
is, it's recessed in.
How much?
The door? This door?
The wall where the door is, yeah, that wall between the front wall where the yellow is and that wall, what's that dimension?
It's 2 feet. Oops, sorry. It's on the elevation plan.
You zoom in there on the lower right.
2 feet. Set back here.
So it shows up there, Bob, on the screen, you can see it. You planned in.
The door is set back 2 feet. That's for the door.
I'm talking about the eave on the roof.
He's talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yes,
this.
surrounding the sign itself.
Correct.
Where is that in the
It's
plane?
on the same plane, if you see it here,
It's in the same plane as the front doors.
yes.
Okay.
correct. Not, well, the large doors,
not
yes,
The overhead garage.
the overhead garage doors, yes.
These.
Okay,
You can see it on the side elevation. on the right-hand side. Here, this is. The overhead garage doors are pushed forward 2 feet here. And then it goes straight up. Obviously, there's a little bit of an eave
Yeah.
separating.
Question for you while we're on,
Not easy to find.
what's the overall height to the top of the cupola? You're showing 36.2, but the arrow points to like the middle of the cupola.
Well, no, I think the 36.2 goes to the top of the cupola here.
So that would be 2 inches taller than our regulation.
No, cupolas are exempt, they're a certain size, non-occupiable, they're exempt from building height. That max ridge there is where your height would apply. And then a decorative cupola can, as long as it's.
So the top of the ridge is that 30 foot 6 3/4?
Yes.
Is that the correct measure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on the elevations? I think Bob had a question on a window.
You had a question on a window?
Windows, yeah. With regard to windows along the exterior of the building, on the eastern side of the building, there's a couple of windows near a person. A pedestrian type person door, and that's where, and there, so on the eastern wall of the building, there's a couple of windows. And then there's a jog in the building and the back 10 feet or so. And so the rear part of the building doesn't have to have windows because it will not be visible from the street. But, and the restrooms apparently don't have any windows, and that's okay, all right? So the windows that are there, on that side, the eastern wall of the building, and the windows greater in number on the western side of the building will all have to be real windows. And they can have a film on them for UV protection of the interior, let's say, but they can't have any reflective film, nor can the garage doors. And in the definition of sign window, with regard to any signage that one might foresee going up in those spaces that are drawn as windows, that windows must consist of clear glass visible to the interior of the building and not faux windows, glazed windows, or other or otherwise appearing as solid in nature. And that also appears in the top of the gray box on the right side of 64.3.5, where the negative example is at West Marine, down the street. They're fake windows. They can't put any signs at all in fake windows. Zero. If you have windows, there are regulations regarding signage in windows if they're clear windows. So any additional signage in those windows on the east or the west side or in the front is subject to the sign regulations.
Understood. At the last meeting, we said no glass will be reflective or any reflective film. I just confirmed with Damian Fox, all the windows are real windows and they're all clear glass windows see-through.
And on site, there are permitted 4 per lot, private directional signs of 4 square feet maximum each, 64.4.1. And so if you have a portion of this lot, as one might anticipate by there being a blank space on the freestanding sign, that any directional signs for this operation will count towards the grand total of 4 for the entire lot. And if you put 4 here, then the adjacent development may or may not happen someday. They don't get more because you've used all 4.
Understood. As of now, there are none proposed. We have pavement striping, with arrows and so forth, and that's adequate for other facilities, so. We don't have any right now. They may be added in the future, but of course would have to be, approved by ARB and zoning. Or we present your regulations as permitted.
All right, then, lighting on signs will be on a timer and be turned off 1 hour maximum after the close of business. That applies across town for all signs. I think that's all I've got.
The only other change that, we haven't talked about was, there was a question regarding, excess oil or other automotive, fluids. We added to the statement of use that those will be disposed of into a secondary containment system or disposal off-site by a service. And there was a question from a comment, made by a member of the public regarding floor drains, and there will be no floor drains on this.
There are no floor drains on
No floor drains.
current property, right?
It's
And-
double wall containment underneath, in the basement, and then it gets pumped out by a licensed.
Right.
State licensed contractor.
Other question on that? Regarding that on the statement of use. They didn't specifically mention the filter. I know in the previous meeting and from the reporting, it was mentioned that they'd be contained, self-contained in a unit, and that whole unit would be removed from site, okay?
I think that's replaced with it.
I think that should be added to the statement of use for clarity.
Fine.
That's acceptable to the applicant.
Just give me that again, so I know what I'm writing.
In
And I
the,
know it'll be a condition, but I just wanna make sure I
And,
understand what you're after.
yeah, in the last meeting,
Yeah.
the discussion on it was, had to do with oil filters,
Okay,
what happens to them? And I
Oh.
believe the statement was that it will be they would be placed in a self-contained plastic or some material.
yeah,
And that whole unit will be removed from the site containing all the oil filters.
That unit will be in the dumpster enclosure on the concrete pad, and it's.
it'll separately be disposed of than other, the whole box gets taken away on the truck, right?
Yeah, same
And
company.
then a new box.
Right.
Puts an empty one back.
Safety clean.
Brings a new one.
Will that container be within the building?
We keep that in a, it's almost like, it looks like a mini dumpster, it's
Yeah.
30 inches wide, that goes in the, dumpster container.
So it'd be outside with the dumpster.
Outside within the fence enclosure.
What's the protocol for any type of oil seepage from that container?
So, we haven't had any issues, the containers, it's a, I would guess you'd call it, looks like a little front load roll off container, it's a. They're made by the safety of the wall container. So we crush the filters inside in where the waste oil is. And then we just take those crushed oil filters, and there's a slot, you just stick them into the slot. On
On a unit, so that it's self-contained.
Yeah, very well, so
It doesn't have a large
they're-
opening to it or anything,
No.
or,
like a typical dumpster has the ones that flap up, this has got a little contraption on the top where you just drop them.
alright, go ahead. Look us out.
Do you have anything, Joe, to add?
The only thing that I have to add is just Jeff Jacobson's comments, and then just a discussion, so we don't forget about it, about the PAM, since this is right at the edge of a PAM area. So in Jacobson's last letter, June 24th, pretty much we go through, all the comments have been addressed. There was a discussion last time about the swale, on the western side. In the northwest corner, there's an existing swale with a drainage pipe, and there was some grading in that area. Expanding the swale, to the east or northeast. And he just wanted us to remove that grading, even though the whole area is gonna be meadow and grass and all the pavement and building is going away that was there previously. He just wanted us to remove that grading, and as the western driveway is really the only impervious area that drains to the western grass area, what will be grass area now. And that is just uniformly graded. It's very flat. It's got a couple feet of elevation over the entire site to the property line. And that'll just be like a flat grass and meadow area where it can just evenly disperse and absorb into the ground. So Jacobson was happy with that, and that's why he says the comment was addressed. He wanted us to add a few more spot elevations in the handicap parking area, which we did, and that comment was addressed. The only couple remaining comments here is subject to DOT approval, because it's a state road. We know that, already met them on site. 4E was about the parking spaces, and it's just a statement saying that he's comfortable with using what the traffic report requires, which is what we have. 6 or 7, we have 7 proposed, including the handicap space. And comment number 7, it says comment addressed, but he talks about the planting schedule, and this is where he asks about the revision date, which has subsequently been added. Ed pointed that out to you before, so all of Jacobson's comments have been addressed. As far as the coastal site plan, you wouldn't really think this area is in a CAM location, but it is. We are dramatically reducing the on-site impervious, at least with this first application. We do have a infiltration trench, stone trench, along the eastern edge and then at the northeast corner, which will satisfy the WQB, or the water quality volume, as required by the DEP stormwater manual, the new one, 2024. Jeff Jacobson reviewed that and again stated that all his comments regarding drainage have been addressed. So with that, with the drastic reduction in impervious and improved stormwater infiltration design, the plan and the proposal in the application meets and far exceeds the coastal area management requirements.
In the last session, there was a question regarding, I think it was on the western side, or a discussion regarding water runoff and the request.
That's what I had just
Is
mentioned.
that the
Yeah.
specific that you were talking about?
That's what I had just mentioned. So, we had some grading, that northwest corner, there's a little swale with a pipe there.
Yeah.
We had some grading extending that kind of to the east. And he just had us remove that, so any runoff from the new site just kind of stays in the flat overland grass area and absorbs into the ground.
The new site means the undeveloped portion.
Correct.
Right.
Well, the previously developed portion will be
Right.
renovated and grass.
Right, okay,
Yes.
okay, so that's how that was dealt with, because
Correct.
you were, I believe, in the meeting, you were adamant that that wasn't necessary at that time.
Well, he basically had said that if we had kept that grading, that he wanted a similar infiltration trench that we have on the eastern side and the western side. But the future plan right now is to expand that, so all that trench would have to come out.
Right.
We put it in. So what we did is I talked to Jeff directly, and he told me his concerns about the increased swale grading. So we just removed that grading and just had it go evenly over that grass area, and he was happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Commissioners have any other questions, Casey?
One basic question, the overhead doors are intended to be all aluminum, no windows, is that right?
They're all,
I do know.
they're all windows, I
They're all
believe.
windows.
The labeling on the elevations kind of indicates that it's all aluminum.
Black and the dye, the aluminum, I think that's probably the frame.
Yeah,
Right,
Jim Simmons is online, if you want clarification of that. Yeah.
I'm fine with it just being clarified. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it's black on black.
My bigger question is about this handicap space. It makes me very, I'm a little concerned about cars, if the queue does back up around the corner and somebody I mean, I recognize that that would probably be used as rarely, as any other parking space, so I understand that. But I'm a little it appears to me to maybe jut out a little bit into the actual driveway on the north side, like the curb doesn't extend as far out as the parking space. And even if it, I have some concerns about the queue backing up and blocking that person in. And I also have some concerns about somebody butting out into the the queue into the driveway and getting clipped. Okay,
Yeah, so parallel space in Old Saybrook has to be 8 feet wide and 22 feet long, which this exceeds that. We did have a sharper corner there, the easternmost edge of that northern island that does account for 8 feet of space required. We had a sharper return radius there, but the engineer, your engineer asked us to flatten that. So
Right.
the access in and out would be smoother and easier for
Right.
person parking. So that is why that appears like that. It does not jut out in, they do not, with 2 lanes in to the building and very long lanes to the back, those are probably at least 80 to 90 feet long. And we have 2 lanes, and then we have 2 lanes in the building, and then we have 2 exit lanes, so they do not, their only hope would be that 2 lanes backed up all the way around the building like that, but that is not the plan. That's not consistent with the traffic report, with those numbers we were looking at before, 6, 9, 10 cars an hour. You could fit a queue, if those are 80 feet long in 2 lanes, you could fit easily 4 to 5 cars in each one. So you would have 8 to 10 car backup, which is more than the hourly traffic count. So
but wasn't the argument for having that escape route out front in that cars might back up around the corner and then somebody would see those?
well, we didn't really say that they might back around the corner. If it did, or if it appeared that way, they just need some way to exit. So if you go to a newer bank or restaurant drive-through, usually there's an outside lane, a whole nother lane of traffic all the way around. So if you decide, you know, if mom has a baby crying in the back and she decides not to get her food or not to order, it's taking too long, she can get out and go around. So there's usually an escape lane. In this particular case, we can't do that with the landscape buffer and so forth. So that was the argument for the front, small 280 square feet of extra pavement out the front. The handicap space was looked at in detail, the grading of it, the dimensions of it. It does have to be proximate to the building,
Right.
and we can't have it perpendicular because the one-way lane is 14 feet wide at that point, and there's not enough room to back out. You need the 24 feet to back out and to a perpendicular space. And we didn't have enough length to make it an angled space. We looked at all those options. And then we went to this parallel option, which is ADA approved, to have a space like this. Cause we had to get it as close to the door, as close to the front door as possible. If a handicapped person comes in as a customer, they generally, everyone stays in their car. No one really gets out of their car. They stay in the car while the wheels get changed.
Right.
So even a handicapped person could come and get in the queue, go right through the building, never leave their car.
Right.
This is really just for a visitor or an employee. So, you know, the chances of very wide, frequent use of that are very, very low.
It couldn't be located up closer to the building off of that escape lane or that exit lane or somewhere in that other, on that other side. The location of it makes me realize.
We looked into all of those options, for all the same reasons, and working with the town engineer, this was the best available spot. And again, like I said, it's not, like if you go to Big Y, there's several handicap spaces, this is really not that use. Everyone, all the public stay in their cars, so unless they have a handicap employee, which max number of employees in here is 5.
You know, we actually do have a handicap employee from Willimantic, and he refuses to park in the handicap.
Right.
Well, I understand that, but I still think we have a responsibility to provide a safe, accessible parking space.
Yeah, and your engineer agrees that it is safe and accessible. We had to get it a certain distance away from the door because of the elevation grade. The site's generally flat, but even if you have a foot or a foot and a half, it still makes a big difference. You have to maintain certain slopes for ADA accessibility. So we couldn't have it closer to the building because we had to make up that slope, so it's as close to the building as possible. A handicapped person could swing right off the edge and park there, and then they get out into that 8-foot wide aisle and get right onto the sidewalk and right into the building.
So the door is off the sidewalk for handicap access?
Yeah, I see the
And the
sidewalk
walkway,
going
the
from the
sideway to the
aisle to the
building,
building, there's a
There's a doorway
doorway.
right there.
Yep. We wouldn't force them into the lanes.
No, just gotta ask the
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah, on the, site elevations, you'll see a man door at that.
So I think what, Casey was, asking is there another location on site that could accommodate a handicap parking space and access to the building that would be safer for the handicapped individual?
My answer is no. We looked at all those other options. We evaluated a bunch with the town engineer. If you have it up in that northeast corner with the other standard parking spaces, they would have to build a wheelchair
Right.
That
across
would
the
be,
traffic
yeah,
lane.
that would be
and
worth,
far away.
right. But on the western side of the building, where the green is, closer to the building,
Then we have to get them across the lanes to get to that side of the building where they wanna get to. Cause the western side of the building are just the oil change lanes. So we would have to have them cross the lane of traffic.
pointing in this
Right,
area,
yeah,
right?
right.
Is that what we're talking about, the same
Right.
spot?
all the pedestrian aspects of the building are on the eastern side.
So there's no building access on the western side of the building, so what you're saying, is that correct?
That's correct. And they would have to get to that northeast corner to get to that eastern side, and that would force them across the lanes of traffic.
Well, if we weren't trying to maximize the remainder available land, we would have a lot of options.
One thing to say about the queue space, Joe.
Yeah.
If where the queue bars line up, in 23 years, we will have been it. We've never seen that, like, it's overkill right now, because we have the space. But the chances of those cars rounding the corner, I mean, I would love to see it personally, but the chances of that ever happening are zero.
Yeah, so you're talking about queuing in those spaces, beyond those spaces and around the
Yeah,
corner.
right.
It would be, it'd be if you gave oil changes away, you might be able to do
Yeah.
that, but other than that, you're never gonna see it, go around the corner.
And for a long time too.
Right, but because we had so much room, like, this is a very kind of simple as sunlight business model, it's a small facility. They, since COVID, everybody likes to stay in their car, especially, and we've always had the handicap stay in their car and for 23 years we went, but, it's the queue space on this is probably the biggest I've seen in any kind of.
Right, yeah, I don't think it's the queue space that you're,
Well, I think that
yeah, I hope you fill up all the queue space.
Yeah,
It'd be good business
sure,
for
but I
you.
mean, for the
Okay.
queue space to go around the corner and interfere with
Right.
handicap
But-
spots.
I, as a handicapped driver.
Yeah.
Okay, I go into your facility to have the oil change, and I pull around to the back and I get in line. Am I required to get out of the vehicle to go inside the building to have the oil change?
No, we've been, for 23 years, we've never ever asked a handicap person to go outside. We will, some people who are uncomfortable
Mhm.
driving
Mhm.
into the thing will either get into the passenger seat or just, or step up, but, 99 out of 100 times they drive it in themselves.
Even non-handicapped persons stay in their car while they will change hand done. Never leave your car unless they have to use the restroom.
Okay, I have one more question. Your overhead doors are 10 feet wide, that's wide enough? I mean, typically, we see 12 feet. So if people, it's because it's regular people driving through.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, a parking space is 9 feet
yeah,
wide.
I mean, I think that's as big as I've ever seen, as I've ever seen is what we have. It's the same one.
Well, that's, okay. All right, so that works.
Yeah.
Anything else? Bob, did you have any other question? Did you have any other questions?
No, just trying to put together a list of conditions of approval.
Right.
And we have, do you have a working list, or should we
Yeah.
start that?
All right, before we do that, let me just go to the other
No, I
commissioners.
don't have any further comments.
Yeah.
Jerry, do you have,
I'm good.
Brenda?
Yeah.
Mike? Just for the record, I don't believe it was read in the last time from the ARB, that they, at their June 9th meeting. With the, presented at the ARB meeting on June 9th with the following recommendations: signage plans meet town guidelines, lighting on signs will be compliant. Landscape plan is exceptionally well designed and most certainly enhance the appeal of the property, and building design meets standards including glass applications and lighting. And then, Ed, I believe you mentioned earlier, the individual that wrote in about floor drains, and that there are no floor drains, in planned, so.
And, they would be too low, they would not be able to drain by gravity anywhere.
Since this is a public hearing.
One last thing, Mr. Chairman, because you should have it there too, is, the health approval grant.
Oh, you're correct. We did receive CRAD approval for the project. Since this is a continued public hearing, is there any member of the public that wishes to speak for or against the application? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Not seeing anyone. Is there anyone online willing or interested in speaking for or against the application? Raise your hand if you are. Not seeing anything, then we'll move on. The commissioner would like to make a motion. Oh, yes, correct. Need to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second,
I'll second Jerry's motion to close the public hearing.
okay.
Okay, seconded by Bob Friedman. Any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Passes. All right, so now do we have all the necessary information available to us this evening to take a vote on the application?
I'd like to, review the contingency, the stipulations or conditions of
Conditions
approval.
of approval. Will you make a motion as such?
I would say the important points include Jay Kulowick, Saturday, June 28th memo, in which it refers to floor drains, that any floor drains inside the building have to be routed to a receiving tank so that contents can be removed by a licensed waste hauler. That lighting on signs be turned off within an hour of closing.
After,
an
hour
An hour after closing.
Not with an hour after closing.
Yeah.
Right. And what else you got?
I have about the trees in the right of way.
If there's a conflict with a tree planted, to be planted in a right of way, that with the DOT, that the tree will be planted on site. Will not be
Yes.
a reason for not planting a tree.
Do you have anything else? Do you have the oil filters? Do you have the oil filter?
That's crazy.
That you want
That's
the,
their business on the back.
that the oil will be disposed of in a secondary, the oil filters in the secondary tank, double wall containment be added to the statement of use.
Correct.
Did you hear that, Bob?
It would be as.
Did you hear that one? Joanne, could you
What you did.
repeat that louder?
That the secondary double wall containment tank that the oil filters are gonna be disposed of in, be
Right.
added to the statement of use.
Oh, yes, okay, great. And the The landscape plan we're referring to is the one revised as of June 23rd, 2025.
Sure, I mean, I think that was it, right? So
So,
we, the motion must be made at this point.
I think that's.
You wanna make the
You're
motion?
gonna make the motion or should I?
Check. I got that, I got that. Oh, there will be no reflective film on any windows or glass.
Yeah.
Thank you, really. With those conditions of approval, I make a motion to approve the application for special exception use for oil change facility for the Mount Vernon Company at 1333 Boston Post Road, map 27, lot 24, in the Gateway Business B4 District and the pedestrian node.
Is this a can? So
Yes.
No.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
yes, it's a can.
It's a
So-
can, it is a can.
So
And the project will be approved as conditioned because it is consistent with all applicable coastal policies and makes all reasonable efforts to mitigate adverse impacts.
second,
Thank you.
Motion made by Bob Freeman, seconded by Jerry Lewis. Is there any discussion? Not hearing any, we move to a vote. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, passes 5-0-0. Thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Committee representative and staff report, since our CEO officer is not here, there's nothing that I have. The inland wetlands and water courses meeting for July has been canceled. There's nothing, on the agenda coming up for that.
You've received a notification that the inland wetlands denial for
91
Sheffield
Sheffield
Street.
Street
was appealed,
appeal, correct,
and that's the return date is sometime in August.
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah, sometime in
And
August.
our recent denial of 8-30G on June 16th is being appealed.
Appeal
You
as
got
well,
that?
yeah.
Right, so it's best not to discuss that.
At all.
Generalities,
Let's-
you can always refer to the
That.
minutes posted online, thank you, those are good.
Mhm.
You may have noticed there's a big red lobster on top of the seafood store across the street from Johnny Ads.
Yep.
And,
Oh, it's finally there.
Chris is on
Yeah.
vacation, but when she gets back, then there'll be something for her to address regarding signs on the roof, sculptures or other artwork being used for commercial promotion, and other such things. If you want to see an extreme example, look up a restaurant called A Taste of Maine in Woolwich, Maine.
Oh, yeah.
They have a lobster
Yeah.
on the roof, or rather they have a roof under a lobster. And so, yes, Skipper's has a lobster and Fenwick Ice Cream has an ice cream cone. And those are matters of enforcement as well. But when it's on the roof, it goes to a whole nother level and just moves the bar.
But that was brought to ZBA and ZBA approved that variance
A variance for what?
for the lobster on the roof.
A lobster on the roof.
Yeah, pending board of approval.
Yes,
And the 15-day window starts and ends when?
I don't know.
any other questions or comments?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded by Casey. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.